In this video, I've compiled my top 6 Milwaukee woodworking tools. Some of these tools are really underpriced. That's how amazing they are. Can't wait to show you these tools. Let's get started. I just finished using this Milwaukee table saw for the first time, and I've got to be honest with you. Just so you know what we're unboxing today, this has the table saw, also a 12 amp M18 battery, and the rapid charger. I will leave links down in the descriptions to this package as well as just the tool, extra batteries, tons of helpful links are all down in the description, so check that out if you want to. So got everything out of the box, and really quickly, before we assemble this table saw, I just want to tell you about my first impressions. And my first impressions are, this is an amazingly built portable table saw. Now, I will say, the previous table saw that I've worked a lot with is a 1.75 horsepower saw stop table saw. This is a job site table saw. So it's going to be, more compact. It's not as heavy duty, obviously. However, this is by far the most well put together, on first impressions, the most well put together job site table saw that I've ever seen. I'm going to walk you through how to assemble this, and then I'll kind of get into some of the basic features, and then we're going to test this thing out and see how it works for a woodworking perspective. But first impressions, you're getting the Milwaukee feel. This is, I think, going to be a great table saw. So first part of setup is to install your saw blade. Milwaukee sends you with this 8 1/4 inch 24 tooth saw blade. I don't think it's going to be amazing. We'll test that out in a second. But all you have to do to install this blade is just switch this to the unlock position, this little throat plate, and this lifts right out. This throat plate, by the way, is great quality. Feels really, really solid, not a cheap plastic one. Quick tip is you, of course, want to make sure that batteries are not installed in your table saw anytime you're doing any adjustments on the blade or changing blades. I know the saw would still need to be switched on, but you don't even want to take the chance of that. You just want to know you can have a battery installed. There is a certain way that this needs to be oriented, so it will tell you right here. It says this side out, so that's going to face away from your saw blade. All I'm doing right here is I put the washer over the blade. I've taken this nut and I've got it hand tightened. Then I'm going to take this wrench that Milwaukee sends in the package. I'm going to hold down the blade lock right here. What's nice about installing this blade is you don't need 2 wrenches to complete the job. I'm just going to let that blade lock do the work to keep the spindle from moving, and you just want to get this blade nice and tight in position. Once you're done, this throat plate can drop back in, and make sure that you lock this back into the locked position. Now, with this package, you're going to get both a blade guard that sits over your blade, keeping your fingers away from getting too close to the saw blade. You're also going to get just the riving knife in case you want to put dust collection over this thing, or you just don't want the blade guard on your saw. Let me show you how to install these. Milwaukee makes it really, really simple, like impressively simple. So on the back of the saw, right back here, there is a riving knife adjustment lever. And all you have to do is loosen this lever and you can drop in either attachment. Now, make sure you're not doing this with a battery installed, but you can drop in the blade guard, and then once it's secured, just lock that lever down. One thing I'm noticing about this lever is that you want to really make sure that your blade guard is seated correctly. It takes a few clicks to kind of work it down in position. So don't force anything right here. Just make sure that you have your blade guard seated properly before you lock that lever down. Now, let's say you don't want the blade guard right now, and you're like, I just want the riving knife. You don't even have to take the throat plate out. You just loosen up that lever, pop the blade guard out, take your riving knife, make sure it's properly seated. There it goes. Lock it in place. Now, what a riving knife and a blade guard, which has a riving knife built in, what these things do on the back is they keep your workpiece from, as it passes through the saw, not pinching behind the saw blade. It keeps those two work pieces on either side of the cut separate, which prevents kickback. It's very, very dangerous to use a table saw without at least the riving knife installed. So don't think, oh, that's just in the way, I'm going to get rid of it. Please do not do that. You want to make sure you have at least your riving knife installed, if not your entire blade guard. Two features of this table saw that I'm really not impressed with. One is the miter gauge. It's just really, really cheap. I mean, the plastic is not even great quality. It doesn't fit snugly into your track. It has a little bit of rattle side to side. It's just not really good. And it's just, I don't know, it doesn't even have positive stops at 90 degrees and 45 degrees. I will say, to Milwaukee's credit, really most of these job site table saws don't come with very good miter gauges. Yeah, so I mean, I'm not really surprised that this is not great, but this is not a great miter gauge. This might end up in the trash, and I might just replace this right off the bat. Not sure yet, but not really impressed with that. Also, I'm not super impressed with the quality of this blade guard. I do wish this plastic was a little bit more robust. I'm really not a huge fan of having plastic blade guards or plastic push sticks for table saws anyways, because if somehow, especially after a lot of time, this plastic were to hit the blade as it was spinning, it could shatter this plastic, sending it back at you while you're using the table saw. It's like shrapnel shooting back at you. So not a big fan of that. Yeah, not a huge fan of the blade guard personally. If you've watched any of my videos before on the channel, you know I'm a sucker for on-tool adjustment tool storage, and this table saw has it. Right here is a great spot to store your miter gauge, or if you just want to throw it away, that's probably a good spot for this one too. And right over here, you have your adjustment wrench storage. This is just so clever. This just locks in. This little turn dial goes a quarter turn, and yeah, this stays completely locked in, so you don't lose this for adjusting your table saw blade. Great features, love it. Oh, also, your riving knife can go right here, but mine is installed currently. One feature that I love about this fence is if you need to extend your fence out, if you're making a wider cut, let's say you get out past the table surface, this fence can drop down, and now your workpiece will have something to catch on to even if you're out here. I've never seen that on a portable table saw before, because this comes in flush with the table. But then, if you need this to make a really, cut some narrow stock, let's say, or get it close to the blade, you can extend that down, or if you don't want this at all, you can just completely fold it back. I like that feature a lot. I think that's very well done, Milwaukee. Another really cool feature about this table saw is that it is a one-key Milwaukee tool. Now, this is another feature, another kind of family of tools within the Milwaukee brand that can connect to your Milwaukee account via Bluetooth. What this can be helpful for is that you can identify where this tool is, when the last time it was turned on, get good warranty information, do a lot of stuff from your phone. You can even shut down the tool from your phone using Bluetooth technology. It's really, really cool. I don't even know all of what it does, but when you get a saw, if you get this table saw, you're gonna log in or create a Milwaukee one-key account. From there, you just turn on Bluetooth, plug in a battery to the tool, and pretty quickly your phone will recognize that there's a tool nearby that you can link to your account. Once you've done this, you'll be able to know just by logging into your app exactly where your tool is. That's really, really nice, especially if you're working on a job site where people are moving tools here and from, and all of a sudden you don't have your table saw. Just log into your app and say, hey, where'd that thing go? Oh, it was stolen. Or, oh, Bob took it home accidentally. Whatever, that way it's nice to track and keep your tools organized. Now that we have all the basic adjustments on this table saw set up, we've made sure that our throat plate is flush. We've made sure that our blade is exactly 90 degrees away from the table. We're ready to fire this thing up and kind of put it to the test. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting down some strips of hard maple on this table saw. I actually have a couple of cutting boards that I need to put together for a customer, and so I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone. I'm cutting down the strips for that cutting board while also testing out this table saw. But maple is one of the hardest of hardwoods that you can find in the US. And so I think it's gonna be a good test for this table saw to see how it can hold up. And then I'll kind of give you my thoughts on the back end of this test. I'll also be sure to give you my thoughts on dust collection. I'm using a Festool dust extractor. It's hooked up in the back here. So this will also be a great time to test the dust collection capabilities of the table saw. I just finished using this Milwaukee table saw for the first time, and I've got to be honest with you. It is not as good as a SawStop table saw. That being said, this Milwaukee table saw really, really impressed me. Let me kind of walk you through the pros and the cons. First, the cons. Let me go through the negative stuff. Dust collection on this table saw is not great. As you can see, before I cleaned this up with my Festool dust extractor, I had this hooked up to my dust extractor and I was still getting covered in sawdust. There was sawdust kind of dropping below the saw right down here. So the dust collection was not amazing. I mean, probably fine for a job site table saw. Definitely fine for a job site table saw. But yeah, if you're wanting that really clean dust collection that you get sometimes with like a SawStop, you're not going to get it. Also, one of the things that I noticed is that, and maybe this is just the blade that's in this saw, because the blade that comes in this saw is truthfully not that great. I'll drop a link in the description to some other blades that are better. But when I was starting a cut, it felt like that blade was just like moving ever so slightly before my workpiece got back there to the riving knife. Once it hit the riving knife, it was giving me like the cleanest cuts. Really no complaints once it hit that riving knife. Once again, not sure if that's the blade. Give me some feedback in the comments if you know why that's the case or what the issue is there. One more con for this table saw is that the crosscut miter gauge is just terrible. Like, I would just go ahead and throw it away and invest in a better miter gauge. I'll link a better one down in the description. That's what I'm gonna do, is just throw this one away and buy the one that's linked down in the description, because you need a good crosscut miter gauge for any kind of table saw, and the one that is included in this is awful. It's really, really bad. Other than that, considering the fact that this is a job site table saw, this table saw blew me away. I told you that I was making a couple of cutting boards, or I'm making some cutting boards for a client. All of this is hard maple that I cut up with one charge on this battery. This battery was not even fully charged when I plugged it into the table saw. I cut down all that lumber, and I still have, if you can see this, half a battery left. That is very, very impressive. I truthfully thought I was gonna have to take a break and charge this battery again. Battery life, it was not an issue on this table saw. I do love how the table saw blade has a brake on it. When you hit the cutoff switch, the power cutoff switch, which is really big and easy to hit if you need to hit it in a quick time crunch, that blade stops really, really quickly. I love that feature. Not just on table saws, but really on any tool. When I hit the cutoff button, I want that tool powering down as quickly as possible. That's a safety issue. So that's a really good thing. This table saw, it stops on a dime. If you are just getting into woodworking and you're looking for your first budget-friendly table saw, this will be an amazing option for you. If you're looking for a new job site table saw and you just need this for, construction, framing, you're not gonna be using this in the woodworking shop, I can tell you that this is the best job site table saw I have ever used. So for all those reasons, I really, really do recommend it. Does Milwaukee have the best track saw on the market, and should you buy one? Answers to all these questions coming up in this video. Let's go. So a couple of weeks back, I picked up this Milwaukee track saw, and here's the reason why I decided I needed a track saw in my shop. Number one, I needed an accurate way to break down sheets of plywood. Honestly, the table saw in my shop, it's got some things around it, so it's impossible for me to break down an entire 4x8 sheet of plywood on my table saw. I had been using my circular saw to break down plywood or sheet goods like that, and honestly, it just is not giving me the accuracy that I need, because it's a circular saw. It's meant for rough cuts. It's not meant for accurate cuts. The track saw will provide me accuracy for breaking down sheets of plywood. Another reason why I wanted a track saw is because I do a lot of live edge coffee tables, end tables, things like that. And I need a way to effectively put a straight joint, edge joint, on these live edge boards. You'll see me do this later in this video. I thought a track saw would be helpful for me as I'm making these coffee tables and end tables. You'll find out soon if I was right. In either case, I bought this track saw, and today I'm gonna unbox it, test it, give you all my thoughts on it, and whether you should buy one. Let's get into it. So with the Milwaukee track saw, you can buy this track saw in a lot of different ways. You can buy just the tool, which is what I did. I've seen Milwaukee put together tool packages where you can get a track saw and a miter saw. Milwaukee also has where you can get this track saw with some other accessories that come with the track saw, like the tracks, track clamps, and it comes with this really, really nice Milwaukee Packout case. Before I bought this saw, watched several other videos on this track saw, and kind of the reoccurring theme that kept on coming up in those videos was that the Packout case is massive. This tool, by the way, like my first impressions of this, when I took it out of the box, the very first thought I had was, this thing is huge. I mean, huge, huge, huge. And so what these people were saying, though, in these other videos was when you put this inside the Packout, there's even space in the Packout. And so I just didn't really want that taking up room in my shop. I'm not going to be moving this from job site to job site very much. So I opted to not get the Packout case. However, if you're a contractor maybe that will take this saw from different job sites to different job sites, I would probably recommend storing this rather expensive saw in the Milwaukee Packout case. So when you get just the tool, you're going to get, of course, the track saw. You're going to get this dust bag. This comes with pretty much any package. You're going to get this splinter guard, and then you're going to get this 6.5-inch blade. One note about this blade is this is proprietary to Milwaukee. So, you know, a lot of saws like table saws or other types of saws, you can get different brand blades, different types of blades. If you're going to get the Milwaukee track saw, you've got to stick with this blade. So we'll see later in the video how this blade holds up. But it's 6.5 inches. I'm pretty sure the Festool track saw, their blade is 6.25 inches. So this will give you like a little bit more cutting depth. Interesting note. Batteries, unless you get some kind of combo kit, are not included. I picked up the M18 XC 5.0 battery with this track saw. By the way, if you're confused on what's the difference between all the different M18 batteries, let me just give you a quick 30-second course on this. You've got M12 batteries, 12-volt batteries for smaller Milwaukee tools, and you have M18 batteries, 18-volt batteries for larger Milwaukee tools. In the M18 platform, you have 3 levels of batteries. You've got CP, you have XC, and then you have HD. Then, to make everything more complicated, each one of those batteries, CP, XC, and HD, has a high-performance version that gives you, according to Milwaukee, like 50% more power. So there's lots of different kinds of batteries. Oh, and on top of that, you can get different amps. So the higher the amp, the more power the battery provides to the tool. If that's not confusing, I don't know what is. But this is the XC 5.0. It's not the high output battery. Basically, this is like a middle of the road battery. I'll link lots of batteries that you can get for this saw down in the description. I will say I would not recommend using a CP battery in this track saw. We're going to try out a CP battery in this track saw later in the video, but spoiler alert, let's just stick with these. So when you get this out of the box, the first thing you're going to notice, especially if you've never used a track saw before, is that there are tons of adjustment knobs all over this thing. So let me just really quickly go over the basics. Right here on the back, you've got your depth engage. So if you have this button not pressed down, your saw's going to be locked in the upright position. But once you engage this, you're free to move it. Of course, you have your trigger to start the saw right below that. Also love this handle that they give you right here. And once again, by the way, this tool, it gives you what I call the Milwaukee feel. Any brushless Milwaukee tool is just going to be, in my opinion, it's going to be very comfortable in the hands. It's going to use metal, high quality plastic, rubber grip. It's just going to give you a great, great feel. Now, right here you have your depth adjustments, and there's a couple of different things you need to know about this. First of all, it's adjustable, of course. So if you want to cut at a 1/2 inch depth or 1.5 inch depth, whatever, you can adjust that to be where you like. Now it gives you 2 indicators right here, 1 line and then 2 lines. The lower of the lines is when you're using it essentially as a circular saw. And so you can actually cut material with this saw without using a track. I wouldn't recommend getting this as your primary circular saw, but you can essentially use it as a circular saw. So that's your depth there. However, right here where these 2 lines are, this is going to be your depth when you're using the track. If you think about it, the track is moving your saw up slightly away from the material that you're cutting, so it makes sense that that's going to be your your depth when you're using the track. This track saw, of course, can cut bevels. So a couple of things you need to know about this. There are two knobs that you need to loosen, one in the front and one in the back, and then you can start to pivot this saw at any bevel you want. The range of bevel for this track saw is -1 degree to positive 48 degrees. So you're getting more than just 0 to 45. That's really, really handy for a lot of applications. So this is really, really good. Don't forget about the back bevel knob. I did that at first, and I was like, man, this is really tough to adjust. I didn't realize there were two bevels. I like that there's two bevel knobs because once you lock it in, you know that it's going to hold that bevel really, really nicely. Now, also right here on the front, you have this, it's called a 22.5, or it says labeled 22.5. And what this does is it gives you a positive stop at 22.5 degrees when this is engaged. So once I lower this down, it's engaged. My track saw is going to stop right at 22.5. And so I got to disengage that if I want to go past 22.5 degrees. Now there's going to be another positive stop at another common angle, which is 45 degrees. But let's say I want to cut something a little past 45 degree bevel. Then what I'm going to have to do is come down to this knob back here, press it forward, and that releases my saw to get up to 46, 47, or 48 degrees. That disengages, and then it's that same knob right there that gets you to -1 degree if you need it. Down here on the base plate, we have two knobs to make sure that the saw is running snugly in the track. Talk more about that later. We also have this anti-tilt feature. That's going to be handy. I think this might be the only track saw that I know of, at least, that has this feature. I know the Festool does not have this feature. I've got some things to say about this when we're testing this saw out later. Other than that, you've got variable speed right back here, easy access, and then of course you have your battery port right here. You also have onboard tool storage for when you're changing out your blade, and you have a little viewing window here. You can switch this out for a splinter guard, but make sure you either have your viewing window or your splinter guard engaged here. You don't want to have this open to where fingers can get caught inside that. Oh, and also you have your dust port back here. Pretty obvious, but not sure if I mentioned that. This can pivot. Nice little feature. Really quickly, I'm going to go ahead and install this blade. I'm going to get out the tracks, and we're going to see how this thing performs. So this right here is the Milwaukee aluminum track saw track. This is what makes a track saw different from a circular saw. You can use these tracks to make sure that your saw is making perfectly straight cuts. Now, Milwaukee has several different lengths of these tracks, and you can interconnect these tracks to make even longer lengths. So this is the 55-inch length track. I picked this up because truthfully, I bought this track saw with a couple of projects in mind, and I knew that this length track would be enough to get me started. But once again, like I said, you can connect these. So if you want to get two 55s, you can connect them. My friend Matt Outlaw over at 731 Woodworks, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out his channel, be sure to go subscribe to his channel. He's always doing tons of awesome stuff. But he recommends that you get at least two 55-inch tracks, so that way you can rip an entire sheet of plywood, which is 96 inches. You can rip one of those down all the way. So, of course, I didn't listen to his advice, and I just bought one 55-inch track. I will probably add on to this. Also, note about this track saw is that it can ride on other tracks. So, Festool tracks, maybe there's a few other brands that if you have tracks for some reason for Festool or some of those other brands that this saw is compatible with, you can use them. You might just have to adjust your knobs a little bit here. On the bottom of this track, there are these little grip pads, which I think is really nice. I've seen people say that if you're cutting down some plywood, something that's really flat, you don't even really need to clamp this down because I'm like pushing this on my table. This is really, really grippy. And one more thing I'll say about this track is it feels really robust. It doesn't feel like I'm going to easily bend it. I'll talk about some techniques for using a track saw in a second, but this feels really good. So to install your saw on the track, all you have to do is simply drop it right in place there. It fits right over this groove. Now, if these knobs are loose, this is, something that's important. You can see there's some give in the saw. The saw is moving independent of the track. You don't want that, so you want to tighten these down, but you don't want to tighten them down so much that it's difficult to push your saw. So I get it to where it's difficult to push your saw, then just back off maybe like 1/8 of a turn. You can see this thing is moving really freely, but when I twist the saw, there's no give. That's the tightness you want for these guys. Now, I told you earlier about this rollover feature, essentially. So let's say I loosen my bevels, and I'm cutting something at a 45. Let's say I lock that in. Look at what my base of my saw is wanting to do. It's wanting to ride up out of that track, which would not be good. So what you can do is engage this anti-tilt feature. And so now I'm going to let go. This thing is holding the track saw in the track. However, what I will say is there's still a little bit of give right there. So what I would recommend, even if you have this engaged, if you're making like a 45 rip cut or something, you want to have your hand right here, not close to the blade, but right here on the track, pushing down to the track, and that's going to, along with the anti-kickover feature, keep your saw making a nice clean cut. I mentioned earlier that these tracks can be clamped down, but of course you don't want to be clamping these with like some kind of clamp that's going to be in the way of your saw on the track. So these tracks come with ridges, and they come with a certain type of clamp that you can use to basically clamp the tracks down from the bottom of the track, which is pretty cool. Now, you can buy some Milwaukee track saw clamps. I did not buy them, and I was driving to the shop this morning to review this, and I thought, wait a second, I didn't buy clamps. That might be a problem. But then I had a thought. What if I can use my micro jig dovetail clamps to clamp these down? I'm like, probably won't fit. But I tested it out, and these dovetail clamps fit perfectly in the track slot. I'm so fired about this. So if you have some dovetail clamps like these from micro jig, which you need to have these anywhere in your shop, I've used them a ton in other videos, I'm sure you've seen it. These will clamp down your track to your workpiece. One more thing we gotta do before we fire up this track saw, I promise I'm not stalling, is we have to cut off the rubber on this track. What this is gonna do is create a zero clearance edge between the blade and where this track ends. And so what you can do is, you don't even have to mark your cut line on your material. You can just place your track down, and you know the edge of your track is gonna be where the cut happens. So yeah, it's a pretty nice feature. Let's do that right now. So trimming up this track was the first time I fired up this track saw, and I just want to say, first impressions, one, it seems very powerful. Now, we didn't really cut anything, so we'll test that in a second. Another thing that's really nice about this saw is it stops on a dime. You heard that when I stopped it, it went and cut off really quickly. I just think that's a nice safety feature. I like that in routers, I like that in saws. I think that's really good. All right, now let's actually put this thing to the test. So right here I have a slab of 7 foot long, over 1.5 inches thick, hard maple. It's got live edge on one side, and what I want to do with this is make a matching pair of waterfall end tables. However, this edge right here, even though it's not live edge, it's not square. So we're going to cut some cross cuts here because I only have a short track, and then we're going to do some rip cuts. We're going to see how this track saw performs, and then I'll give you my honest thoughts on whether you should buy this saw or not. Right here, I'm set up to do a rip cut. Since this rubber edge is zero clearance from the blade, I know this is right where my blade's going to be, and so if I run this down the track, it's going to make a perfectly straight edge. You can see right off the cut that the jointed face of this board is right in line with that rubber edge that we just cut. And then it goes that way, all the way down. And since this track is perfectly square, we know that board is now perfectly edge jointed. And let's go over here real quick to the track saw. Still have 3 bars of battery, so that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and joint this board, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. When you're running your track saw, you want to make sure all of your momentum is going along the track Let the saw do the work. Don't try to force it. Hey, before we finish up the review of this Milwaukee track saw, if this video has been helpful for you, I need one favor from you. I need you to hit the like button on this video. Also, if you want to stick around for future tool reviews from Milwaukee, also Ryobi, lots of other tool companies, be sure to hit the subscribe button. It's totally free. It just makes my videos a little bit easier to find, and it means the world to me. Hey, thank you so much. Let's keep on going with this video. So I just got back in the shop from cutting down these maple slabs right here behind me, which, by the way, if you want to see me turn these into waterfall joint end tables, be sure to hit subscribe. That video will be coming out soon, and if it's already out, I'll link it down in the description. So overall thoughts on this track saw. Overall, I'm very, very impressed. Generally, any Milwaukee brushless tool that I review, I'm going to probably like it overall because it's just the quality is so good. As far as the blade goes, I mentioned earlier that this is a proprietary blade that Milwaukee has. So that's the blade that you're going to have to use if you have this track saw. Fortunately, the blade was really good. Like right here on this over 1.5 inch thick maple, there wasn't any kind of burn marks or anything like this. This left a really, really clean cut, and that's hard maple. So that was really, really impressive to me. I thought the saw performed very well. It holds in the track extremely well if you have your adjustment knobs properly calibrated. I will say I was using the XC5 amp battery. After making all those cuts out there that you just saw me make, this thing says it's got half battery life left, which is pretty solid. However, there were times where I really felt like this saw was giving it everything it had. So I would recommend this be the lowest power battery that you try in this saw. Earlier in the video, I said, hey, we're going to try out the CP, like 3 amp battery in the saw. It would not work. Like maybe if I was cutting down cheat goods, it'd be fine. But if you're going to be doing anything like I was doing with the hard maple, you might even need an HD battery. At the minimum, use the XC 6.0, and I'll link that down in the description. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on the battery. Overall, if you are in the market for a track saw, and if you're on the M18 or the Milwaukee battery platform, I would highly recommend this track saw. It will not lead you wrong. I mean, this is a great tool. Is this M18 router by Milwaukee the new gold standard for compact routers? Let's find out. Okay, so first up, let me show you what is in the box, what comes in the box. They packaged this very efficiently. We have our dust collection port right here, alternate router base, and the actual router, along with instructions and these little catalogs that make you want to buy more Milwaukee tools. I don't know why they include these in the box. Anyways, I'll check out that later. Man, this is packaged really nicely. Also, there's a lot more that comes. Ooh, an edge guide. There's a lot more that comes in this box than in like Ryobi router, or the Ryobi router that I reviewed on the channel a couple months back. This is a little more expensive router. You're going to be getting a little bit more with it. Now, the package I got does not come with batteries. You can, of course, get packages that do come with batteries, and I'll link the different batteries down in the description that you can use with this router. But wow, right out of the packaging, this feels really good. It feels comfortable in the hand. It's got great weight to it. It might almost be a little too heavy. We'll talk about that in a second. But this looks really good. Let me unpackage this real quick. Okay, so after unpackaging everything, once again, you got your hardware to mount your edge guide and also the hardware to mount your dust collection port. I kind of wish this plastic felt a little more robust than it does. I mean, this is Milwaukee. This is the makers of Milwaukee Packout, the best storage system in the world. And then they give me like this cheap plastic dust port. I don't know. I mean, it just kind of feels like if I dropped this on the floor right now, it would probably shatter. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Kind of the opposite from like this base here, though. This feels really good. this router base right here feels really good. Anyways, going back to the router, feels really, really great in the hands. When you pick this up, it's just got what I call good weight. It doesn't feel cheap. All of these components are metal. This fixed base is metal with a little hard rubber grip here. One thing that I think is also important for routers is you don't want them to be too wide. And because if you're like holding a router with your hands really open, it's just going to get uncomfortable, especially if you're using your router for a long period of time. This does not have that problem. This is very, very comfortable in the hands. I even love like this adjustment here. That's fully metal, which I really, really like. Yeah, just the way this feels is so good. A couple of features before we fire up this router. This is a variable speed router, okay? That's really, really nice. Once again, just as a reminder, when you're routing, the more material that your bit is going to remove, the more you want to slow down the speed of that bit. So if you're using like a pretty chunky roundover bit, let's say, maybe like a 1/2 inch roundover, that's removing a good bit of material. And so you're gonna wanna slow down the speed of your router. However, if you're doing like, a maybe 1/8 inch roundover and you're just barely touching up the sides of like a cutting board or something, well then you could speed your router up and remove that material more quickly. So when you adjust your speed based on the size of your bit, it's going to give you more safe and more accurate cuts. It's going to be less likely to run away from you. Your router's not going to run away from you. So just kind of keep that tip in mind. Because of that, I never will buy a router that doesn't have variable speed. To me, every router, in my opinion, needs variable speed. This one has that. You're also going to get 2 LED lights with this. We will check those out in a second, but I like the fact that it has 2. Good lighting, in my opinion, is very underrated when it comes to really just woodworking in general. If you can't see your cut lines, if you can't see what you're doing, it can lead to inaccurate cuts or maybe even getting your finger too close to a blade or something like that. Another great feature about this router is that you can take this fixed base off, and this doesn't come in the package, but you can buy an accessory plunge base. And I'm pretty sure that's what this is for, is when you attach the plunge base to your router, which you could also just attach this if you wanted like a wider base. But that's a really nice feature. I don't know personally that I would use a plunge base with this router for most of my applications. Like when I use a plunge router, for me, in my shop at least, it's usually because I'm surfacing a slab, like an epoxy and like an epoxy coffee table or a live edge slab or a cookie. There's no way I would use this router for that. To me, this router is like, let's put in some edge profiles, maybe if we're doing dovetail inlays in a jig or something like that. So I didn't get the plunge base, but it is nice to have that as an option. I really haven't seen that with most compact routers like this. One more nice feature is if you want to do macro adjustments to the height of your bit, you got this button right here, so you can adjust everything. There is a little indicator on the side, but I wouldn't trust that too much. I kind of wish this had positive stops right here in the main cylinder so you could stop at 1 inch or 2 inches, but that's pretty nitpicky, honestly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put a battery in. This is the M18 1.5 amp battery, and I love how the lights come on. You maybe can see this. The 2 LED lights come on. They don't stay on, but right when you put the battery in, they're on for a few minutes. Once the battery's installed, this, once again, pretty weighty router. I think it's mostly good weight. I like having some weight with the router, but man, especially if you were to put a bigger battery on here, this would get pretty heavy if you're routing for a long period of time. So just kind of something to think about. I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that's kind of how it is. All right, so let's turn this on speed 1. One thing I'm not a fan of is that it doesn't have a soft start. I really wish this kind of had a soft start. I'm gonna go up to number 4 speed. It's got a quick stop, which I like that. Almost sounds like there's a brake being thrown on there. But yeah, I wish it had a softer start. yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit of a soft start. It starts quick and it stops quick. I love that it stops quick. Wish I had a soft start. That's just me. Yeah, honestly, this feels great. Really excited about trying out a few things with this router. The first thing we're going to try out is I'm going to do some flush trimming on a charcuterie board that I'm working on. And by the way, if you're interested in seeing that video, it's going to be coming out in a few weeks if it's not out already. So be sure to subscribe to the channel and you'll see that video come out. But we're going to test this router by doing some edge trimming on that charcuterie board. Then we might put it through a couple of other tests and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, before I give you my final thoughts on how this router held up, how the battery life was, all that kind of stuff, if this video has been helpful for you, if you could just hit the like button, it's right below the screen. That's just kind of the way to give back on YouTube, and it really means a lot to me. So hit the like button. Also, if you're interested in more tool reviews, I review a ton of Milwaukee stuff, a lot of other brands too. Subscribe. Love to have you around for future tool reviews, woodworking projects, things like that. All right, let's go ahead and give you my final thoughts on this Milwaukee router. So after running this router for a little bit, honestly, I am really, really impressed. I like the way it handled. I felt very comfortable using this router in an actual project, like in an actual builds that I'm currently working on. So honestly, y'all, I'm a huge, huge fan of this Milwaukee router. To be honest, for projects like I just did, which is something I do with most of my palm routers, I'm usually doing round overs on a cutting board or chamfers on a cutting board or edge profiling. This is going to be my new go-to router. I love that it's battery powered, and so you're not having to worry about extension cords. That's always a pain. I hate getting out extension cords. Battery life was pretty solid. Now, this is the 1.5 amp, so really I should probably get a better or more high capacity battery for this router. I'm just going to add that to my shopping list, I guess. And I'll link some that Milwaukee has down in the description of this video. But for this project right here, I did the edge routing on this little charcuterie board. And, it probably was 7 minutes of routing, and I went through an entire battery. So from full to absolutely dead. Which once again, I was going over this a couple of times. I was doing some back routing. This is a hardwood. It's pretty thick. So it was probably a good bit of stress on that battery. I would have liked to see the battery life be a little bit better, but once again, this is a 1.5 amp battery. It's like the lowest amp battery in the M18 line, and so I'm not really putting that on the router as much as I am my personal battery selection. Overall, if you're looking for a compact battery powered router, this is the best one that I've ever used. This is a Milwaukee one that I reviewed on the channel a while back, and it's solid for a budget router, but it does not compare to this Milwaukee. Hands down, this is the best compact router I've ever used. Here's the feature that I have never, ever seen before when it comes to jigsaws. So when you get this Milwaukee barrel handle jigsaw, this is what comes in the box. You get obviously the tool, your dust collection port, your dust cover, I guess. And this is also a neat thing that we're gonna test out called the anti-splinter guard. I think it's like a little plastic piece that goes right around the blade. This is an M12 jigsaw. Milwaukee also makes an M18 jigsaw. Just a quick reminder, with the Milwaukee platform, if you have an M12 tool, it can fit these 3 amp M12 batteries. They also have 5 amp M12 batteries. You got the 1.5 amp M12 batteries. So I can throw this battery in here and it's fine. That will power this tool. I can also throw in the 3 amp M12 battery. Obviously the 3 amp is what I'm going to be mostly using with this jigsaw because, this jigsaw is a little bit of a, more powerful tool. So the 3 amp M12 battery is going to give you more battery life. Unless you pick up a package from like Home Depot or maybe Amazon has some, you're probably just going to get the tool and you're probably going to have to buy the battery separately. I'll link some batteries down in the description. I actually just picked up a 2-pack of these 3 amp batteries, and really, really nice. Before we fire up this Jigsaw, let me just go over some of the basic features. And like I said, this Jigsaw has a feature that I have never seen on any Jigsaw that I have ever owned. Maybe it's on the nicer Jigsaws and I'm just now getting into nicer Jigsaws, but I've never seen this feature before. But before I get to that, basic features. You do have variable speed. You have all the way up to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you have something called I think this stands for automatic. And this will basically vary your, like blade movements per minute varies between, I think, 1,500 and 3,000. So I think this will kind of either speed up or slow down your blade depending on what you need for that cut. If you're going around a hard turn and a cut or something like that, it's going to adjust your blade speed accordingly. That's actually really nice. I've never seen that on a variable speed Jigsaw. I've normally just seen like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, if you're going to have a cut that have some straightaways, but then you have some, some turns, you might want to throw this thing in automatic so it can intelligently adjust the blade speed. That's pretty cool. Obviously, right here, you've got your on-off switch. When you do plug in a battery, right here, you have your fuel gauge, which tells you how much battery life. Right here, you have your fuel gauge, which tells you how much battery life you have. When this thing starts to blink, I think when it blinks once, that means you have about 10% of your battery left. And then obviously when it's constantly blinking, it means your battery's dead. Go charge the battery. You have right here your oscillating switch. So 0 oscillation, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you have all those settings. 0 oscillation means your blade, your Jigsaw blade, is moving perfectly straight up and down. Whereas like full 4 oscillation, it's kind of moving laterally a little bit. When you get this Jigsaw in your owner's manual, it will give you a guide for how much orbit you want in your Jigsaw depending on the type of material you're cutting. Like I think I saw maybe if you're cutting some sheet metal or something like that, you're going to want a higher orbit. It's just going to help you make a cleaner, more efficient cut. A lot of Jigsaws now have been using this feature. In fact, I reviewed a Ryobi D-handled Jigsaw on the channel a couple months back, and it even had this feature, and it's a much cheaper price point Jigsaw than this one. When you go to install a blade in your Jigsaw, you have this toolless blade installation function, essentially. You don't have to grab an Allen wrench to install a blade. That's super, super nice, and this feels really, really good. I love the way that they designed this blade installation thing here. Of course, you can adjust this Allen key at the bottom of the Jigsaw here. If you want to cut at bevels, they give you marks for 0 degrees, 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, all that kind of stuff. You also get this little, I think they call it like a shoe cover right here. Now, when I reviewed my Ryobi D-handled Jigsaw on the channel a few months back, I saw this. I'm like, oh, they packaged that really well. And I took this little shoe cover off, like so, and I threw it away. Don't do that because this is actually part of the tool. Someone in the comments of that video said, hey, actually, what this is used for is if you're cutting something that you don't want to mar. Let's say you're cutting a finished cutting board or maybe some plastic or acrylic. You want to have this installed so you're not leaving like tool marks from this boot right here on your workpiece. And I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Also, what's really cool is right here in this boot cover, whatever they call it, you have built-in blade storage. You can put 2 Jigsaw blades right here. And so let's say you have a couple of different Jigsaw blades you want to keep with your saw. You can maybe have 1 in the saw, 2 stored right here. That's a really, really nice feature. Speaking of on-tool tool storage, right back here, you also have your Allen wrench to adjust the bevel of your tool. I think that's really, really nice. It fits in there really nicely. When I was looking through the owner's manual of this, it said, here's your Allen wrench. I was like, where? You can barely see it, and it just kind of hides back there so nicely, but really easy access. I really, really like that. Before I get to the last feature that's crazy on this Jigsaw, and then before we test this Jigsaw out, one more thing I'll say is just the overall quality of this tool feels really, really good. It's something that I've just started to call the Milwaukee feel. I think, in my opinion, every Milwaukee power tool that I've ever used, it just has that next level of quality feel. This Jigsaw is extremely comfortable in the hands. I'm super excited to try this out because I've never used a barrel-handled jigsaw, which is what this is, compared to a D-handled jigsaw like this. All my jigsaws, this is my first battery-powered one. I reviewed this on the channel a while back. You know, this is how you're cutting versus this. I have a feeling that this barrel handle is going to be way more comfortable to cut with than the D-handled jigsaw. And Ryobi actually now has a D-handled jigsaw as well. So if you want me to review that on the channel, just let me know. One more feature that I really, really like about this jigsaw is it gives you an LED light, but where a lot of the Milwaukee tools, like I just reviewed a router, it only powers on that LED light when the tool is turned on. It's not the case with this jigsaw. If you don't want the light on, you can leave it completely off. But you got this button on the front of the tool, and it can have the light on even before you power the tool on. I don't know why every Milwaukee tool does not have that feature, because let's say I'm wanting to see my cut line. I'm in, maybe a spot where I don't have great lighting. You don't want to fire up the tool to see where you're working. That you just want to be able to turn on your light and say, oh, here's my line or whatever. I really, really like that feature. Okay, so here's the feature that I have never, ever seen before when it comes to jigsaws. Maybe this is a normal thing for nicer jigsaws. Like I said, I've personally never seen it. Right here on kind of the back side of the jigsaw, you have this little toggle switch. And on one side of the toggle switch, it's basically saying, hey, we're going to blow the sawdust away from your blade while you're cutting. And then the other side is not blowing sawdust away. So the idea is when you have this like clean out feature engaged, it's going to keep the sawdust away from your cut line, which actually, if you've, used jigsaws a lot, you know that a lot of times that sawdust that only a jigsaw can make, it's right there on the cut line, and sometimes it can be hard to see what you're working with. And so I'm really curious to see how this feature works. I'm going to test this by using the dust collection port as well. This dust collection port just locks in right here behind the tool. It doesn't go off to the right or to the left. I think that's pretty nice. And also it fits even if you have your larger 3-amp battery. It, of course, fits in right there. Okay, so let's go ahead and power this on. I'm going to start with the speed 1, the slowest setting. I think that's 800 blade movements per minute is what it is. I honestly don't know why I would ever cut at that one speed. That seems pretty low. This is 3 and 5. It's a little loud when you're at 5, but also vibration is very, very minimal. That's really, really nice. And once again, very comfortable in the hands. So I've got my blade installed. I have my blade guard installed. Let's go ahead and test this out. The way I normally test jigsaws is I'll take like any kind of lumber, usually a piece of chapel or cherry or maple, and cut out a charcuterie board template. In the shop, I make lots of charcuterie boards. Here's one that is like halfway done, and I will usually use templates from Crafted Elements, and so you always start out by cutting out the general shape. Anyways, I'm probably talking too much about this, but that's how I test out jigsaws, is I'm like, can it cut out a charcuterie board shape? Because you have all these different curves and straight lines, and it's just a good way, in my opinion, to test jigsaws. By the way, if you're interested in seeing me make this charcuterie board, I'll link that down in the description, so check that out. Okay, so just then I had this blowing feature on. You probably saw sawdust kind of blowing out that way. I noticed it a good bit. Now I'm going to turn this off and see if I notice any difference. Okay, I just had to pause the making of this charcuterie board to say, wow, this feature made a huge difference. At first, I was kind of like, I tested the blowing feature first. And so I was like, okay, it's kind of keeping sawdust out of there. Not a big deal. When I turned this off, which most jigsaws would just have this off, I was blown away by how much sawdust was in the way here. I couldn't even see my cut lines. That is crazy good. I really like that feature. Once again, it's a feature that I've never really seen on jigsaws, but it makes a difference here. I will pretty much always, I think, be leaving this switched on. I'm going to go ahead and finish up this cut, and I'll give you my final thoughts on this jigsaw. Yeah, let's just finish this up first. Hey, before I give you my final thoughts on this Milwaukee Jigsaw, if you could do me a huge favor and hit the like button, only if this video has been helpful for you. If it hasn't been helpful or whatever, no worries, but if it has or if you've learned something, hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel really helps me out, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, final thoughts on this Jigsaw. Here we go. Okay, so after using this Jigsaw to cut out a little charcuterie board rough blank, let me just give you my honest thoughts on this. First of all, if you have never used a barrel-handled jigsaw, especially this Milwaukee one, I think you will be blown away whenever you, just like me, make the switch from the D-handled jigsaw to the barrel handle jigsaw. Your hand is closer to the cut, not in a dangerous way, just in a way that gives you, in my opinion, more control. I was cutting some pretty intense curves on a really short board, so I didn't have a lot of control. It was a tough cuts that I was making, basically. But this jigsaw gave me lots and lots of control. I really, really liked that. Like I said, this feature that keeps your blade area clear is a game changer. I'm going to be using that a lot. One thing I was not really impressed with was this little blade guard. This installs right here. It probably helps with dust collection. I think the main reason it's included in this kit is so that you don't get your finger in there in the blade, but you always have this little wire thing here that's going to be a safety feature. This, in my opinion, made it really tough to see because it was getting all this, fine sawdust on it, and it was making it tough to see my cut lines. Also, it's just extremely, extremely cheap. Like, you can see it flexing here. I feel like it just would break very easily. I'm going to keep it, of course, but I was not super impressed with that little feature of this jigsaw. One other thing that happened is this Allen key got loose while I was making the cuts, so all of a sudden my whole foot of the jigsaw was loose. But what I noticed when I went to retighten it is this gives you positive stops for all of your main angles. 0 degrees, 15 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, which is really nice. I was like, oh man, I'm going to take out like a 1, 2, 3 block or a square to get this squared up to the blade. Didn't even have to worry about that because it gives you these positive stops right back here. That was something that I really, really appreciated. When it comes to battery life, I mean, I was running this for probably 3 to 4 minutes on a pretty high speed oscillation, and I still have 3 out of 4 little fuel dots on my fuel gauge. I just made the upgrade to get 3 amp M12 batteries, and I am really, really glad that I made that upgrade. In my opinion, sometimes batteries are not like the most fun thing to buy for your shop because you're like, batteries, it doesn't give you the ability to do anything new. But when you invest in some more high performance batteries, like going to the 3 amp from the 1.5 amp, it's a game changer in my opinion. So I'll leave links to these batteries down in the description if you want to pick up some. If you are going to pick up some batteries and use the link down in the description, it really helps me out. Same price for you, but it really helps me out. So I really, really appreciate that. Overall, I would 100% recommend this jigsaw. If you have a D-handled jigsaw and you're ready to make the leap to the barrel handle, this is a great, great jigsaw, a great, great tool. Once again, this is now my go-to jigsaw. There's even another jigsaw I had in my shop that was a D-handled that I'm going to sell because I know I'm never going to use it again. no point in having it in the shop because I now have this jigsaw. Did Milwaukee just change the game for battery-powered circular saws? Let's find out. Okay, so straight out of the box, this is what you get with the kit, at least the kit that I got. You get the actual saw. The blade comes with this, but the blade is not installed. You get your dust port adapter. Instructions, very important. All the packaging on these cheaper Milwaukee tools are just come in the cardboard box. This doesn't come with any kind of bag even or much less Packout case, which is fine because you're not, paying a ton of money for this saw. Before I put all this together, I just want to say right out of the box, you're getting with this tool what I call the Milwaukee feel. That the rubber grips on this front handle and also trigger handle are amazing. It's got good weight to the saw. The battery is not installed and the blade's not installed, but it's got some, it's not too heavy. You don't want it to be too heavy, but it just feels quality. I will say something I'm not a huge fan of with like Ryobi tools. Sometimes they just feel a little bit cheap. Does not feel that way at all. This is very comfortable in the hands. Of course, in a second, we're going to fire it up, but I just want to say right out of the box, this saw feels amazing. One thing just to make sure you know about this saw is that at least the package that I got, it does not come with any kind of M12 battery, and it of course does not come with an M12 battery charger. So you'll have to get that separately or find a different package than what I found. This is just what you get when you buy the saw. One quick note about installing your blade is this bolt right here is threaded the opposite way. So actually at the top when you're heading to the left, you're actually tightening because this is a saw blade that spins and you don't want it to, the manufacturers didn't want it to loosen when it spun, obviously. So that's why it's backwards. You can use this little locking mechanism here to make sure you get this good and tight. It locks the blade in place so you can tighten this, which is a super nice feature, and it just slipped because I let go. There it goes, locks and tighten. Once you have your saw blade installed, you can put this Allen wrench right back here. I'm a huge fan of any time you can have like on-tool storage for adjustment tools, because if I leave this around my shop, it's going to get lost, but it's really low profile. This Allen wrench can just stick right there, and then anytime I need to switch out the saw blade, I've got this right here. Also, one more note, just make sure anytime you're changing your blade or even like working on a vacuum adjustment, never have your M12 battery installed. You don't want this saw to start up on you when you're working on a saw blade. So make sure to keep your battery out of your tool. I'm a huge fan of the way that this vacuum adapter fits in. It just kind of slots in right there. This locks, and then you have one Phillips head screw that you insert back here. That is super handy. In just a second, we'll of course test how good this dust collection is, but I like the way that this attaches. It's really, really simple. Okay, so now that we have this saw put together a little bit, let me just tell you a little bit about it. This is an M12 circular saw. It's got a 5 3/8 inch blade. The way that Milwaukee markets this saw is they say this is your framing saw, because at full depth, this saw blade can basically only cut through dimensional lumber, so 2x4s, 2x6s when you're cutting the narrow side, or plywood, sheets of plywood. But really anything thicker than that, this saw is not going to be able to handle. But on the flip side, you're getting this at a lower price point. It's lower profile. It can run off the M12 battery platform, which is really nice. So that's the 5 3/8 M12 saw. Right now, in my shop, I only have the 1.5 amp M12 batteries, and I'm honestly planning on getting the, I think it's the 3 amp M12 batteries. It's the ones with like the square bottom. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I probably need to get some of those batteries because they'll just last a little bit longer in this saw. This saw is going to be pulling a lot more power than like an impact driver or an M12 drill would. All right, I've got the battery installed. I'm just going to fire this up for the first time. Okay, the reason that didn't work is because this has a trigger guard. You have to pull this down and then pull the trigger. I actually really like that feature. So here we go. Wow. Okay, a couple of things. First, this is super quiet, very, very quiet. And then when you let go of the trigger, it stops on a dime. That is really, really nice. A couple other features that I want to point out is you do have a battery indicator right here, which tells you every time you start the saw how much charge is left on your M12 battery. It's right up here by your trigger. At first, I actually didn't think that this had a battery indicator, so that's kind of a pleasant surprise. Also, you have a nice LED light that's kind of shining towards the front of your saw blade. I really like that. Few other features about this circular saw that, I'm gonna take this out, are pretty standard. This can cut bevels up to 50 degrees. The main thing I look for in a circular saw is that, you just adjust this here. The main thing I look for is that it can cut over 45 degrees. If it can cut over 45, that's gonna allow you to do most of what you would need to do with a table saw when it comes to cutting bevels. Like if you wanted to hide a corner of some plywood or something like that, 45 degrees is your angle there. The way you adjust the depth of your blade back here, you just kick this up, and then you've got your adjustment there. So don't forget, same safety tip as always. You want the least amount of your saw blade exposed. That's true whether you're working with a circular saw like this or a table saw. If you're cutting, a little veneer, something really, really thin, you don't want all this blade exposed. So be sure to adjust that just for safety. And then one more cool thing is this has a little hook. This is not something that's normal for circular saws. This just kind of folds out like that, and you can hang this on a belt. You could hang this on a tool rack. I just thought that's pretty cool. That's metal, by the way. Feels really good. So yeah, pretty cool. Pretty nice features. Oh, one more thing. It doesn't come with this, but this has an attachment or a place for an attachment that you can get a rip guide. So this just kind of clips in here, and if you want to go, parallel to the edge of a piece of plywood or a board, you can buy the rip guide. I don't have the rip guide, so can't really tell you if I like it or not, but it has that option. Okay, sweet. So next, what we're gonna do, let's test this thing out. Let's see how it actually cuts when we're, working on a project. Okay, we're gonna first test this by cutting through some half-inch plywood that has a black walnut veneer. Also on the ends, you can see this has like a 1-inch strip of black walnut hardwood. So we're just gonna go all the way through this and see how it holds up. First impressions, I'm pretty impressed, honestly. You can definitely tell when I got to cutting this thicker hardwood, kind of slowed down a little bit. It had no problem at all with this plywood. One more thing, I'm just telling you things I'm learning as I go. You have to, of course, hold down this trigger to start the saw, but then once you're in your cut, you can let go of this safety trigger. You don't have to hold down both. You can, but you can let go of this and just hold on to the trigger if you want to. All right, I'm gonna make a few more cuts. This is a fully charged 1.5 amp M12 battery. I'm gonna see how many cuts I can make before this battery dies. Hey, by the way, if you're curious as to what I'm making with this amazing black walnut plywood veneer stuff, be sure to hit the subscribe button because I'm coming out with a video on what this project is. It's gonna be pretty sweet, so be sure to subscribe, and that'll be coming out in a few weeks. As far as battery life is concerned, I made 6 of those all the way through the plywood. cuts, and I still have, according to this, half battery left. And that's with the 1.5 amp. So if you had the 3 amp battery, you'd have an even longer battery life. So I will say, for what this is, a framing circular saw that's going to mostly be intended for cutting down 2x4s and plywood, your battery life is going to be really, really good. Now, Milwaukee claims on the box that it can cut up to 190 cuts per battery. Of course, they don't say what kind of cut that is, so I find that, not misleading, but just, maybe you can cut through 190 2x4s is what they're trying to communicate there. What I'm trying to say is I'm very impressed with the battery life on this. It's not something where, it being battery operated is a huge con, because I'm not having to constantly switch out the battery. So I think that's really, really good. So would I recommend this circular saw? The answer is yes, I absolutely would. If you want what this is, a framing saw, if you do a lot of, more rough type woodworking, you're building things like decks or cornhole boards or outdoor furniture, or even just want something to break down plywood when you're far away from a power source, this is a great tool. I'm super glad I picked this up. This was not sponsored. Milwaukee didn't send me this saw. They don't know I'm making this video. I paid full price for this saw, and I've been super, super impressed with it. So I'm really glad I picked it up. Of course, links are in the description if you want to pick up this exact saw. And if you use the link in the description, it just helps me out a little bit. Milwaukee Packout. Is it just a bunch of overpriced plastic boxes and storage containers? Let's find out in this video. So before I get into all of the different Milwaukee Packout products that I have, what is the basic premise of Packout? Packout is a system of tool storage or supply storage containers that lock together. So right here I've got a normal, small parts organizer, and then a low profile small parts organizer. What makes this so cool is I can take the small parts organizer, lock it in, and then carry both. It's very heavy, but all of the Milwaukee Packout products lock together super tightly, and then I can unlock them here and then go. In my opinion, Packout has kind of two different types of products. Some of their products lean more towards job site, while other of their newer products lean more towards woodworking shops, or shops where you're not really transporting tools all that much. You're more just looking for tool storage and organization. So that's kind of what I've leaned into. I personally very rarely go do work on a job site. So for me, like, my next Packout purchase is most likely going to be the shop cart that has 4 wheels. You can wheel it around. It has a work surface that clips on top of one of these storage containers. It's going to be super, super nice. I've seen lots of videos on this. I just haven't bought the bullet to purchase it yet. But those Packouts have drawers that you can pull out cups from those drawers, all that kind of stuff. So there are Packout products, whether you work on a job site or work in a shop. Now, here are the different Packout products that I have. There are a ton, like dozens, maybe hundreds at this point, of Milwaukee Packout products that you can buy. But here are the ones that I have. This is the Milwaukee Packout crate, I think is what it's called. And as you can see, it's just a totally hollow one-piece crate. What's really cool about this is it can lock to a Milwaukee Packout case below, or you can actually mount it to a wall and store stuff in it that way. I don't have a wall mount for this crate right now, something I want to get in the future, but it's kind of nice. This crate, you have versatility to mount it 2 different ways. What I use this crate for is a lot of my power tools that I don't have a box or a bag for. So I keep sanders in here. I've got some Forstner bits. Honestly, there's just, random sandpaper. This needs to be cleaned out. But what's nice is I can put all of my big kind of bulky power tools in this crate, and it makes the shop look a little bit neater. Also, if I'm going to a job site or if I'm taking stuff outside to sand, I can grab this crate and then take it outside. I don't need to be making a ton of different trips in and out of the shop. That might seem like a really small thing, but to me, it is huge. Also, I just will say about this crate and all the Milwaukee products, the quality is It's, in my opinion, just next level. I am a huge stickler for the way things feel in my hand. I don't like the feel of cheap plastic. I don't like the feel that I'm going to break something if I set it down too hard. And I don't get that feeling at all with Milwaukee Packout products. You can tell that there's quality in the way these things are put together. Up next, I have one of these modular storage systems. I don't know if that's exactly what it's called. I actually have two of these. I bought a second one because I love them so much. This is basically the original Packout, or this is kind of, when I think of Packout, this is what I think about. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 little cups that pop out. You can take these anywhere around the shop, which is super handy if I'm working on something over in this area of the shop and I just need some nuts. I don't need to take this entire suitcase. I just have to pull out this cup, head over there, work on what I'm working on, bring it back, drop that in there, close the lid, and it's done. One more awesome thing about this particular product is there is zero clearance between the lid and all of the different cups that are in this tray. So if I were to take this and then take it upside down, shake it around, put it back, everything still is in the same compartment that it was in. A lot of other tool storage systems don't have that feature. And so if you're really like kind of being rough with transportation or whatever, you can open it up and you've got, you know, all the different types of screws mixed up, and it's just a mess. Packout, you don't have to worry about that. To me, that's a really key feature. Packout also has another tool storage system that has Kaizen foam in it. Now this one, as you can tell, is pretty much brand new because I haven't cut into the foam whatsoever. But if you have some tools that you want to really make sure aren't rattling around, maybe you are driving to job sites, driving off-road to job sites, and you want to make sure that your tools stay safe, you can take any tool, drill, impact driver, sander, whatever, and cut out custom inserts in this foam for your tools. And so that works very well. I love the customability of this. And then you can also take this foam out. So if maybe you need dual use out of this, you can take out your foam insert and just throw in random stuff and it'll kind of rattle around without the foam, but you can get the kind of dual use out of this particular Packout. I think this is called a Packout toolbox. This one is narrower. So when I think about Packout, I think about there's double wide, like those previous ones I showed you, and then you have single wide. I don't know if that's the technical term, but that's how I think about all this stuff. But this right here is obviously much deeper. It's got a tray that pulls out, which is super nice. I have this thing absolutely jam-packed full of stuff. What's nice about this is you can customize how many inserts you want. So if you just want 2 big trays to store stuff, you can, pull out these red dividers. If you want more divisions, you can absolutely put in these red dividers as well. I wish I could tell you exactly what all I store in here, but the truth is right now, this is kind of a catch-all for me. I've got everything from Forstner bits to brad nails to Craig screws to hinges to a sandpaper eraser. I haven't even told y'all about this, but save that for another video, but this thing's sweet. So, yeah, lots of random stuff in here. It's kind of a catch-all for me right now. That's how Packout works. Oh, and this handle is super cool. Look at this. This handle folds up, but then when you fold it down, it's zero clearance and you can stack stuff on top. But you fold it up, I mean, that's pretty sweet. Last Packout product that I personally have is this low profile organizer. Now this is great. I've seen a lot of people use these types of Packouts for electrical things. So wire nuts, wire strippers, all that kind of stuff. But obviously lower profile. This Packout, what I use it for is I actually keep this in my house and I keep kind of like household things in this Packout. So I've got everything from little, pads for furniture to 9-volt batteries for my smoke alarms. I've got, what are these called? Things to mount stuff in the wall. Shower hangers. I mean, you name it, it's in here. AA batteries, AAA batteries, picture hangers. It's all here. What I love about these low profile products is even though it has 10 cups as well, they give you lots of these dividers. So you can actually divide this up into like 20 different sections to store stuff, which is really nice because a lot of times you don't have a ton of, let's say drywall mounts. You just want to store 6 or 7 of these, but know where they are when you need to get them. So these dividers make organization a breeze. Huge fan of this. One more super cool feature about Packouts that really isn't even Milwaukee's doing, it's that there are a ton of people, third-party vendors, who make aftermarket products for Milwaukee Packouts. If you go on Etsy and search Milwaukee Packout products, you will find tons of people who are 3D printing products that fit into a Packout that maybe exactly fit a certain drill, like an M12 drill or an M12 impact driver or whatever it is. You can get so much customability, not only with the initial Packout purchase, but then if you want to even customize further, you can go on Etsy and buy all kinds of products. More and more, I'm wanting to focus on making my shop a clean, creative space that when I walk in, I don't feel stressed out because I see tools and junk everywhere. I'm not there yet, but I see a clean workspace that's kind of like a blank canvas for me to create whatever I want to create. Packout's a huge part of keeping everything for me in my shop organized. Once again, I'm not there perfectly yet, but I'm on my way. Yes, it is the most expensive. Yes, a lot of people will probably be in the comments of this video saying it's a bunch of overpriced plastic boxes. But in my opinion, the quality that you get, it is absolutely worth it. I'm a huge fan of Milwaukee Packout. In my opinion, just try it out before you say it's overpriced. And if you were going to start with one Packout product, I would absolutely start with this kind of base model tool and small parts storage tray. Once again, all of this is linked down in the description, but I'm a huge fan of Packout. I just think it's great. If you're looking for more ways to upgrade your shop, then check out one of these 2 videos, because in these 2 videos, I talk about some ways and some jigs you can use to upgrade your shop. So I'll see you in one of these videos.